Chapter 5. They had been gone from home for 3 days now. Claudia insisted on a fresh change of underwear every day. That was the way she had been brought up. She insisted for Jamie, too. No question about it, their laundry was going to be a problem. They had to get to a laundromat. That night they removed all their dirty clothes from their instrument cases and stuffed those that would fit into various pockets. Those that didn't fit, they wore. A double layer of clothes never hurts anyone in winter, as long as clean ones are worn closest to the skin. Saturday seemed a good day for housekeeping chores. There would be no school groups for them to join. Claudia suggested they eat both meals outside the museum. Jamie agreed. Claudia next suggested a real sit-down restaurant with tablecloths on the table and waiters to serve you. Jamie said no, with such force that Claudia didn't try to persuade him. From breakfast at the automat, they went to do laundry at the laundromat. They emptied their pockets of underwear and removed the layer of soiled socks. No one stared. Someone before them had probably done the same thing some time that week. They bought soap from the machine for 10 cents and deposited a quarter into the slot in the washer. Through the glass in the door, they watched their assorted clothing spill and splash over and over and around and around. Drying cost 10 cents for 10 minutes, but it took 20 cents worth of minutes to dry everything. When all this was done, they were disappointed. All of it looked dismally gray, very unelegant. Claudia thought that their white underwear should have been washed with the red and navy blue socks, but she would not have considered asking for more money for anything as glamorous as dirty socks. Oh well, she moaned, at least they smell clean. Jamie said, let's go to the TV department of Bloomingdale and watch TV. Not today. We've got work on the mystery of the statue all morning tomorrow, because tomorrow the museum doesn't open until 1 o'clock. Today we must learn all about the Renaissance and Michelangelo to prepare ourselves. We'll do research at the big library on 42nd Street. How about the TV department of Macy's instead? To the library, Sir James. Gimbals? Library! They packed their gray-looking laundry back into their pockets and walked to the door of the laundromat. At the door, Claudia turned to Jamie and asked, Can we? Jamie didn't let her finish. No, dear Lady Claudia, we have not the funds for taxis, buses, or subways. Shall we walk? He extended his arm. Claudia placed her gloved fingertips on top of Jamie's mittened ones. Thus they began their long walk to the library. Once there, they asked the lady in the information booth where they could find books on Michelangelo. She first directed them to the children's room, but when the librarian there found out what they wanted to know, she advised them to go to the Donald Branch Library on 53rd Street. Jamie hoped this would discourage Claudia, but it didn't. She didn't even seem to mind backtracking up Fifth Avenue. Her determination convinced Jamie that Saturday would be spent this way. Once at the library, they examined the directory, which told what was available, where, and when the library was open. In the downstairs art room, the librarian helped them find books, which Claudia selected from the card catalog. She even brought them some others. Claudia liked that part. She always enjoyed being waited on. Claudia began her studies, never doubting that she could become an authority that morning. She had neither pencil nor paper to take notes, and she knew she wouldn't have a lot of time to read. So she decided that she would simply remember everything, absolutely everything she read. Her net profit, therefore, bless you, would be as great as that of someone who read a great deal but remembered very little. Claudia showed the executive ability of corporation president. Pick a box. She assigned to Jamie the task of looking through the books of photographs of Michelangelo's work to find pictures of Angel. She would do the reading. She glanced through several thick books with thin pages in tiny print. After reading 12 pages, she looked to the end to see how many more pages there had more to go. More than 200. The book also had footnotes. She read a few more pages and busied herself with studying some of Jamie's picture books. You're supposed to do the reading. I'm just using these pictures for relief, Claudia whispered. I have to rest my eyes sometimes. Well, I don't see any pictures that look like the statue, Jamie sighed. Keep looking. I'll do some more reading. A few minutes later, Jamie interrupted her. Here he is, he said. That doesn't look anything like the statue. That's not even a girl, Claudia said. Of course not. That's Michelangelo himself, Claudia replied. I knew that. 2 minutes ago you didn't. You thought I was showing you a picture of the statue. Oh, I meant, well, there's his broken nose. She pointed to the nose in the picture. He got in a fight and had his nose broken when he was a teenager. Is he a juvenile delinquent? Maybe they do have his fingerprints on file. No, silly, Claudia said. He was hot-tempered genius. Did you know he was famous even when he was alive? Is that so? I thought the artists don't become famous until after they're dead, like mummies. They studied a while longer before Jamie's next interruption. You know, a lot of his works were lost. They say lost in parentheses under the picture. How can that be? A statue isn't something like an umbrella you leave in a taxi and lose. That is, those people who actually ride taxis. Something you wouldn't know anything about. Well, they weren't lost in taxis. They were lost track of. What kind of sentence is that? Lost track of. Oh, baloney. There are whole long books about the lost works of Michelangelo, picture works and sculpture works that people lost track of. Claudia softened. Is the little angel one of them? What's the difference between an angel and a cupid? Jamie inquired. Why? Claudia asked. Because there's a lot of cupid for sure. There's a lost cupid for sure. Angels wear clothes and wings and are Christian. Cupids wear bow and arrows. They are naked and pagan. What's pagan? Jamie asked. Boy or girl? How would I know? Claudia answered. You said they are naked? Well, pagan has nothing to do with that. It means worshipping idols instead of God. Oh, Jamie nodded. The statue in the museum is an angel. It's dressed and it's all together. I don't know yet if an angel was lost. Then he glanced over his sister and muttered, Track of. Claudia had begun her research confident that morning study would make her completely an expert, but Michelangelo had humbled her, and humility was not an emotion with which she felt comfortable. She was irritable. Jamie ended his research where Claudia had begun, very confident and happy. He felt that his morning had been well spent. He had seen a lot of pictures and had learned about pagan. He leaned back and yawned. He was becoming bored with pictures of David and Moses and the Sistine ceiling. He wanted to find clues. Already he knew enough to tell if Michelangelo had sculpted the little angel. All he needed was a chance to investigate, without the guards hurrying him. He would know, but would his opinion be accepted by the experts? I think we should find out how the experts decided whether or not the statue belongs to Michelangelo. That would be better than finding out about Michelangelo himself, Jamie said. I know how they find out. They gather evidence like sketches he did, and diaries and records of sales, and they examine the statues to see what kind of tools were used and how they were used. Like no one living in the 15th century would use an electric drill. How come you didn't take art appreciation lessons with me? The summer before last? Yes, before school started. Well, the summer before last, I had just finished the second half of first grade. So what? So baloney. That was all I could do to sound out the name of Dick and Jane's dog. Claudia had no answer for Jane's logic. Besides, Jamie agreed with her. I guess it is better to look for clues. After all, we're doing something that none of the experts can do. Claudia's impatience surfaced. She had to pick a fight with Jamie. Don't be silly. They can read all this stuff too. There's certainly plenty of it. Oh, I don't mean that. I mean that we're living with the statue. You know what they always say. The only two ways to get to know someone are to live with them or play cards with him. Well, at least the little statue can't cheat at cards like someone else I know. Claudia, dear, I'm no angel, statue or otherwise. Claudia sighed. Okay, Sir James, let's go. And they did. As they were walking up the steps, Jamie spied a Hershey's almond bar still in its wrapper laying in the corner of the landing. He picked it up and tore one corner. Was it bitten into? Asked Claudia. No, Jamie smiled. Want half? You better not touch it, Claudia warned. It's probably poisoned or filled with something that you shouldn't be doing. So you'll eat it and become dead. Jamie was irritated. Couldn't it just happen that someone dropped it? I doubt it. Who would drop a whole candy bar and not know it? That's like leaving a statue in a taxi. Someone put it there on purpose. Someone who you should not be doing things that you should be doing. I read once that they feed that chocolate to little kids and then the kid becomes and then people sell bad things at very high prices which they can't help but buy because you shouldn't be doing them. High prices and all. And Jamie, we don't have that kind of money. Jamie said, oh well, bottoms up. He took a big bite of the chocolate, chewed and swallowed, then he closed his eyes, leaned against the wall, and slid to the floor. Claudia stood with her mouth open, stunned. She was on the verge of screaming for help when Jamie opened his eyes and smiled. It's delicious. Want a bite? Claudia not only refused to bite, she also refused to talk to Jamie until they got to the restaurant. Lunch cheered her. She suggested that they play in Central Park for a while, and they did. They bought peanuts, chestnuts, and pretzels from the vendor outside the museum. They knew that since the museum opened late on Sunday, they would accumulate a lot of hunger before they got out. Their bulging pockets were now full of staples of life, food and clothing. Jamie entered the men's room. He had arrived, as was his custom, shortly before the first bell rang, the bell that warned everyone that the museum was closing in 5 minutes. He waited. The bell rang. He got in the booth. First bell, second bell. It was routine, just as boarding the school bus had once been routine. After the first day, they had learned that the staff worked from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m., a work schedule just like their father's. Routine, routine. The wait from 9 when the staff came until 10 when the public came seemed long. Claudia and Jamie had decided that the washrooms were good for the shorter evening wait when the help left at the same time as the visitors, but the washrooms were less satisfactory for the long morning wait, especially after Jamie's close call that first morning. So time from 8:45 until safe time after 10 in the mornings was spent under various beds. They always checked the dust under the bed first, and for once Claudia's fussiness was not the reason. Reason was the reason. A dusty floor meant that it had been cleaned very recently, and they stood less chance of being caught by a mop. Jamie stood on the toilet seat waiting. He leaned his head back against the wall of the booth and braced himself for what would happen next. The guard would come in and make a quick check of his station. Jamie still felt a ping during the short inspection, but that's only part wasn't quite routine, and that's why he braced himself. When the lights would turn out, Jamie would wait 12 minutes, lag time, Claudia called it, and emerge from hiding. Except the guard didn't come, and Jamie couldn't relax until he felt that final ping, and the lights stayed on. Stayed on. Jamie checked his watch 10 times within 5 minutes. He shook his arm and held the watch up to his ear. It was ticking slower than his heart, and much more softly. What was wrong? Had they caught Claudia? Now were they looking for him? He pretended he didn't speak English. He didn't answer. He wouldn't answer any questions. And then he heard the door open. Footsteps. More footsteps than usual. What was happening? The hardest part of this was the corpuscle of Jamie's 9-year-old self was throbbing with readiness to run, and he had to bind up all that energy into a quiet lump. It was like trying to wrap a loose peck of potatoes into a neat 4-cornered package, but he managed to freeze. He heard the voices of 2 men talking over the sound of water running in the sink.